I'll invite colleagues to put your hand up and get you to ask the question so that we've got a more engaged exchange between our colleagues. But we'll start off with our presenters, and I understand that Professor Wang is going first, so please allow me to introduce Professor Meizhong Sabrina Wang from the National Kaohsiung University of Hospitality and Tourism in Taiwan. Over to you, Sabrina.
Yes. Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Yeah, welcome to this forum. I would like to share my slide when I talk. Okay, so thank you for inviting me to share my experiences in this forum. I would spend 1 minute to introduce my college, again, my university. There are 5,000 students in my university. We have 4 colleges: hospitality, tourism, culinary, and international college, where I serve as the dean at this moment. And we adopted the so-called sandwich style teaching, which means that the students will have their first 2 years studying in campus. They will have the whole year, the 3rd year, have their internship in the industry. And then they will go for come back to the campus for the final year study. And you can see this picture is happened just 2 weeks ago. We have the opening ceremony for the new semester because we don't really have the lockdown or school closure in Taiwan. So we are really lucky here. And for the 3rd year, it's about 1,000 students per year will have their 1 year internship. We work with about 150 companies, and we have more than 20 global internship partners. And out of the 1,000 students, like 20% averagely will go for their overseas internship. Okay, so as you can see that by August, there are 1.6 billion learners in more than 190 countries and in all continents suffers from school closures, not to mention the impact on the industry. As you can see, a picture is worth of 1,000 words here. So all the internship were terminated for our spring semesters, which means that students cannot finish the 10 credits for their degree. Then we have to organize the online learning for the other 3 years still at the campus, and we redesign the curriculum and we try to explore the new normal in the future. So I would like to share with you and seek for the answers from all of you. It's like, now is the policy of social distancing, but for hospitality and tourism education, we really are very human-centered. So how about the interpersonal chemistry, which are really difficult to be transmitted in the virtual environment? And also, although we are forced to turn everything distant, but how about the social presence, how students and teachers present themselves in such a virtual environment? So I just completed one study, and I would like to share with you the results. Although we don't have school closure, but we have the scholars from other countries to teach in our postgraduate international master programs. They are teachers from UK, Australia, Malaysia, and mainland China. They cannot come. So this course were turned to online. So we check their social presence by using Garrison Adults Communities of Inquiry Framework and Whiteside's social presence model. And we want to find out how the students perceive social presence during their online learning experience and how teachers enhance this online learning environment using social presence. And we have categorized the response into 4 categories with 17 indicators. And it shows that instructor involvement is really important because the materials used, the teaching style implemented, and the supplementary activities used by the teachers, they really try very hard and try to provide the face-to-face experience to the students. And about the effective association, the use of emotions, self-disclosure, and use of humor, all these variables are perceived by the students. So they can establish a sense of personality and characteristic for each participant. However, in terms of interaction intensity and community cohesiveness, that's really low in these two categories, because students say, like, foremost, non-verbal nuances such as movements and haptics are almost imperceptible in the flow of real-time video conferencing. And community cohesive is also low, because they say the limited support each learner can contribute to their classmates. Okay, so why I want to share this study is that although we have this online, but still we need to pay attention to this, how students perceive the social presence. Okay, but because of the lack of intensive interaction and the reduced social cues, so this is something we need to think about in the future, if this is the new normal in the future. And we just chat before the opening that some areas, countries start to have the lockdown again. So how about the teacher, the quality control issue? Okay, that's something I would like to point out. And also, there are some challenges actually existing before the pandemic. Take Taiwan, for example. We suffer from the low birth rate in the recent decade and the influence of technology on the workplaces. And we have a national curriculum reform for secondary schools. So as you can see, this is 2020, this year. We suffer from the decrease of the number of students enrolled, but there are more years to come. You can see still continuing decreasing. And also the influence of technology may influence the job markets in the future. So we start to think about what's the talents they need from the industry. So how we can work on our curriculums so that our students won't be retired after maybe just 5 years or 10 years in their career. And for our secondary school curriculum reform is from skill-based to more literacy-based curriculum. So how to connect the secondary curriculum with the tertiary curriculum is also something we have been challenged, and we are having meetings to work on this these years. Okay, so I would like to share that because distance learning or blended learning might be the new normal, but the flexible and individualized learning really works well for everyone, every student. So we may need to pay attention to how to engage learners, the learning engagement. And also, will there be possible amount of students they are not reachable by this distant learning? Okay, and alternative pedagogical resources from national and international platform. I think we are lucky. Always, like, crisis is always the turning point, because think about the IPOE forum in the past years. We have to be physically there. We need to spend money taking plans and finding place to stay, but now it's free. So actually there are more resources available, but our teachers ready for that? Do we have enough support for them? So the alignment of education and industry. So what are the future talents they are expecting from our university? Okay, so I would like to suggest the marketing theory of 4 Ps. Let's think about the future education. Okay, in terms of product, if education, the courses, the product, how the technology will be involved in the future, and more theoretical courses can be transmitted online. But how about those culinary courses? I'm also wondering if it's like the food preparation, you can do it step by step, no problem. But how about the texture of the food, the aroma? Maybe in the future we will have advanced technology to transmit this. Okay, so about place, borderless, time limitless, and the mobile learning together with pricing. Why I say so? Because many of my friends' children, they postpone their learning abroad. Like if they cannot have contact with local cultures, just have everything online, that prefers they or postpone their learning. Okay, so some students also argue, I don't use any facilities of your university. Could I have cheaper tuition fee. So the flexibility and segmentation pricing policy will be that possible for the future learning. And nowadays there are a lot of self media and social media. So I can see maybe in the future we will also face the challenge that's because the impact of this COVID-19. Some students don't want to major in hospitality. There's something we can observe now. Although we are still the top 1 university in Taiwan, we can see the conversation like this going on. So how about in the future, how we kind of bring back those students patient with this in the major hospitality and tourism is also something we can consider. So I would like to kind of wrap up. Go back to this, how we modernize the education system for the 21st century, how we equip our learners with the 21st century competencies, and we can talk about what are exactly, 21st century competencies are. So go back to education, we can think about the goal, does this change? The teaching contents, should we upgrade, updates, and instruction approaches, and the evaluation of the learning outcomes. So I quite like this. In this time, I think alone you go fast and together we go far. And that's all for my sharing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sabrina. Professor Wang there, a wonderful introductory talk and presentation, taking a very academic approach to the issues. We now move on to our second speaker, Mr. John Daly from Swiss Education Group. So over to you, John, to see how you are dealing with the issues long term.
Thank you very much, Dr. Thompson. Thank you for the introduction also, Mr. Chair Whitelaw, and a warm welcome to all our international community. I did have a look at that list of enrollments and registrations for this conference, and we've got quite a well global community represented. So once the three of us are finished talking, really interested in hearing the voices of other people in this community. I will follow a structure that we kind of discussed together when we were preparing for this talk, where I'll share first maybe a little bit of the situational analysis in Europe, talk a little bit about the strategies that we're using in Swiss Education Group and some of the other schools also in Europe, and a little talk about the vision about where we think we may see things going in the future. But again, it will be wonderful to hear your voices after this first introduction about, which strategies are working well for you, and again, where do you see things going in the future. So very briefly, I will introduce and thank you for the very nice presentation of NKUHT, Professor Wang. Behind me is Co-Palace. It's one of the 5 schools of Swiss Education Group. I work as Director of Quality Assurance at the Swiss Education Group. I've been with the group 18 years, and we are private hotel schools. We're the largest hospitality and culinary and business education providers in Switzerland. Switzerland is kind of the home of hospitality and hospitality education, as some of you may or may not know. So we have been probably hit particularly hard by the situation with COVID over the last year. As of now, you may have heard Paul and some of the others in the conference talk yesterday saying that Melbourne and other places are coming out of lockdown. Well, most countries in Europe have gone back into or are going back into lockdown. So we had a lockdown in most of Europe in March, April. Mostly opened up for a couple of the summer months, but in this last 4 weeks, we've been experiencing really exponential growth in most of the European countries, particularly Spain and France. Italy, Germany is getting bad. The difference between this second wave and the first wave is that the lockdowns and the measures have been more regional rather than national. So France and Spain have so-called red zones. So if you're in the red zone where there's a high infected area, and if you're in a school, it's likely that you've been forced into distance learning. If you're not in a red zone and you have a school or a hospitality business, maybe you're open for business. So Sometimes it's dependent on geographic location on how you've been hit. Switzerland, where we are, has had an exponential growth in the last couple of weeks. Various cantons have imposed lockdown measures, and there's a federal announcement due today, which we think will be more of a national federal lockdown. So, I mean, if you look at overall the situation in Europe, that means the federal lockdown means we'll be forced to go back to online. I did do a little bit of research yesterday, and what I did find shockingly was that it appears travel, according to my research, is down about 50% in Europe. And with that, flights in Europe, not internationally, but internationally in Europe, seem to be down 87% by some research. So that's obviously significant. So, you know, when the flights and the travel are down, then the demand for hotel and hospitality products are also down, and therefore the relationship with hotel schools like ourselves dramatically changes, especially when you talk about a European product, which is heavily dependent, well, it's global now, but heavily dependent on internships. You know, so the internship is a big part of the product in most hotel schools in Europe, I suspect in Asia and the States too. So that's been a big challenge for us, and we're really thinking about ways to go around. And, you know, like Sabrina was talking about, you know, how do you fill those 10 credits needed to graduate, or in another way, how do you achieve those learning outcomes? So really interested in hearing back from the people in the audience about what you're doing in your institution to deal with those, you know, practical classes and internships. We and most schools in Europe at the moment have moved to, or are moving to, kind of hybrid models of teaching, where you know, a big part of the product, especially in Switzerland, has been that whole experiential learning. As one of our schools you can see in the background, and the students live and learn in a hotel, which was a former palace, and that's a massive part of the learning, that outside of classroom, you know, soft skills experiences. So that's been to be severely cut today when the announcement goes out and students are confined to their bedrooms. So the whole idea of doing banquets and interacting in the reception, in the restaurant, in the bar, experiential learning, all the kind of fun and cool bits of hospitality education are somehow removed. So we've been moving to online teaching, in some cases in very small groups. We can have some teaching sessions, but predominantly that's been an online. I think Jane was going to run one or two polls here, just so that we can get a small bit of primary research from the group. And Jane, you might want to put the first one of those up right now. But I also did a small piece of research myself, and I do want to see if I can share that. That's the first poll. Thank you, Jane. And I'm also going to see if I can share this screen here. So this is a report from McKinsey that came out recently, and you know, looking at European numbers about the impact of how it will affect enrollments. So I'm interested in seeing how it will affect your enrollments. And let's see if the results that we have in the ICE community are the same as this McKinsey report. You can see in most cases, you know, when you ask the question, do you believe COVID will affect enrollment numbers in the year? People are saying yes, both for local and international. We kind of knew that that would be the answer to that question, but I think I've got one other piece of research that I wanted to share here that I thought was interesting from that McKinsey report. That's not the one, this one here. Not sure if you can see that. So here's a regional analysis, and again, it would be interesting to hear from your different regions when we break out, you know, teaching, how has it been, or the level to which it's been affected. Has it been not affected? Has it been replaced by distance learning? Has it been suspended, or has it been cancelled? So you can see in most cases in Europe, classrooms have been able to be replaced by this distance learning. Africa, not really. In Asia, you've got 60%, and in America, 72%. So Europe overall doing well on adapting, okay? But let's see if the experience is exactly the same when you do adapt. There was one other that I think I wanted to share with you that I thought was good. No, never mind. Okay. So again, it would be interesting kind of as we move on to the next section to see what the polls say and how your numbers have been adapted and whether you've been able to move across to the online teaching model. I guess in SEG, definitely our enrollment numbers have been reduced like most schools here. So we've been trying to look at more creative delivery models and, you know, planning for different ways that we can attract different market segments in the future. Which is the second part of this talk, which was about strategies. I'm conscious of time, so I won't burn too much time. But I guess strategies that have been working for us, I couldn't say in one sentence. We've been using multiple different strategies because, you know, we've got multiple different weak points that have come across because of all of the changes. But I could say, and listening to Sabrina this morning, together we go far, and listening to the talks yesterday, you know, this whole idea of collaboration has been central and critical to our survival strategy. So we've increased the amount of collaboration and increased the amount of collaborators and also the amount of collaboration tools. So for us, collaboration is the central word around lots of kind of the strategies that we're using to kind of navigate our way through this. We've invested heavily in various different technologies. Zoom is being used well with its breakout rooms for teaching and learning. Teams is being used well at a staffing level for projects. WhatsApp is being used well for internal chat groups and discussion groups. So investments in technology and in technology infrastructure. With that have had to come increased investments in training. Training to use the technologies, but also significant training for all of the teachers to teach online, because as we well know in this community, the way that you will teach and interact and learn with an online community is not the same as you would do in a normal class. So we did put all of our faculty through an online training course and received some quite good feedback out of that, and we're running that for a second time now as we go into the second wave of lockdown. But again, partners and partner engagement have been critical. We in SEG did a big new piece of research with the Mandarin Oriental. We did sign a new contract with Kempinski. We do have dramatically increased relationships with local and federal government. And communities like the ICE, even though we've not been able to see anyone face to face in the ICE this year, we've not been able to attend the conference. I and all of the academic directors in Swiss Education Group have engaged way more with the ICE community this year, funnily enough, through all of the webinars and information sessions and value added. You know, this has been a tremendous source of free information. And basically all of these collaborations that I spoke about somehow are meant to achieve the objective of giving us more information so that we can take better decisions and be more informed and intentional going forward. And listening to that, you know, very interesting piece of research from Professor Wang this morning, stuff like that's just been done and just recent is really, really useful for academic planning. So engaging with our collaborators like the ICE and the other schools in the ICE community, like what we're doing in this platform this morning, engaging with industry, engaging with government has been a critical part of our strategy. And also research, I think, you know, we're schools, so we essentially, you know, the foundations of teaching and learning is research. So there's going to be a dramatic need for increased research as we transition through this time of change. So that piece of research that we heard about this morning will be really beneficial. Jane, I think I sent you a link yesterday that you're also going to share. One of our academic directors in Cesarewitz colleges, Tanya Florenthal, did a great piece of research which was published just 2 days ago, I think, on teaching creativity. And two of the panelists in the discussion yesterday talked about the importance of creative and adaptive skills in our educational curriculum. So again, you know, stuff like this, doing research, sharing the research, exposing the research has been, you know, a tremendous helpful strategy as we go through this. But overall, I have to say that the best as always, and the most useful and the most positive and the most creative community that we've collaborated with, that we've engaged with, are the students. So that would be a strong recommendation from my side to anyone in that group this morning. The more that you talk, the more that you engage with your students, the more that we find out how fantastic and wonderful they are. Very often they will come up with better and more creative solutions than ourselves. It puts you in a situation where you're really listening to the customer instead of trying to double guess what the customer thinks and needs. So making the students part of the solution and engaging them in kind of putting measures in place to bring an outcome that's reasonable for all of the stakeholders has been a great strategy that we've used, and I see others using as well. So you know, our CEO says to us on a regular basis, we just need to, you know, stay calm, carry on, as the cliche says, but it's true. That's what we do need to do in a situation like this. Stay calm, stay focused. Know this red enemy, this red virus that's attacking us. Know the enemy, know our research, know the information, and stay calm, carry on. So that's kind of been a little bit about the strategies. And then the last part is the vision. I'm aware I'm going over time, so I'll do this fast. Vision for the future. Again, we don't know for sure, but what we do know for sure is there will be change, and that will continue to change. Personally, I believe it will be a dramatic change. I heard someone yesterday talking about a tsunami of change coming to the educational world, and I wouldn't be surprised if that tsunami does come. The change, I think, will come not only in curriculum, but delivery of curriculum. We're going to be probably seeing more hybrid models, more micro credentials, more short courses instead of the 4-year bachelor degree. At the same time, the whole idea of lifelong learning is probably going to return, and probably we will see more collaborations as there's more need for industry and educational collaboration. We need to go back to that instead of having a divide between our industry and our educational product. Tourism, all research says, will rebound. Any graph that you look about historical data says tourism is one of the most resilient industries. So we can be confident about that. But in this case, unlike other terrorist attack or crises that we've had in the past, government has been putting stimulus to try to get the tourism industry back up and running. In this case, government is actually closing us down. So it's a slightly different scenario. We're trying to get up and running, but regulations don't allow the hotels to open in many cases, or don't allow the schools to teach. So it's slightly different. So the rebound will be slightly delayed compared to other crises, I believe. But it will come back, and it will come back strong, I believe, and I think we can be confident in that. So I think now is a time that we need to invest a lot of time, resources, and energy on preparing for that time, because when it comes back, it'll be stronger than ever. So this is kind of like, you know, we're the Olympic athlete preparing for the Olympics, where you do all of your training, and then, you know, you're ready to take off when that new burst of demand comes back. So I think that's what we should be doing right now, getting ready and preparing for a new curriculum, new ways of teaching, bringing new items into curriculum. Like, I think I was thinking about this morning, probably crisis management, creativity, the whole idea of security and safety. And then I think this whole idea of virtual collaboration will be a critical tool and outcome of our future graduates. But overall, increased and more collaboration across the entire value chain. So knowing the value chain and understanding those stakeholders, figuring, you know, entering into dialogue, figuring out what the needs are. And I think we'll find out with these increased collaborations, there's big win-win scenarios. If you take only the case study of the ICE this year, we have new collaborations with HOSCO. There's a new collaboration with iGraduate. There's a new collaboration with Lobster Inc. So there's been new and additional value added for our partners and for our partners' partners, and that's kind of the way that ICE have been navigating. And as a consequence, our numbers, you'd be surprised, you'd hear this in the AGM, but I think the numbers in the ICE have actually increased this year. So back in February, we were going, oh my God, no one's going to want to stay with us. But I think because of the value addeds that ICE and other providers have been putting in place, we see numbers actually increasing. So to close, I think we should be confident of the future. We need to be getting ready now. And I will close with the same statement as the previous speaker, which says, together we go far. Thank you, Dr. Wang, for that. I'm a strong believer in that philosophy. And with that, I think I'm handing over to Dr. Hobson. Thank you very much.
Yes, indeed. Thanks, John. Thank you for the European perspective from SDG. Now we bring in Professor Perry Hobson, who's going to give a Malaysian and possibly Asian, Australian and international perspective. So over to you, Perry.
Well, thank you very much for that, Craig, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be joining us around the world. As you've heard, I'm based here at Sunway University in Malaysia, and so it's great to welcome you to my little bit of the world and to try and give you a little bit of an overview about some of the challenges that I think we've been suffering from. I wanted to just touch on some personal reflections on what's happened over the last 6 months. And then, as you've heard from both Sabrina and John there, to look at some of the lessons from that in terms of where we're going forward and the challenges that we've got. So here in Malaysia, the situation is that we've gone into our second lockdown. The government has stopped us from bringing in any international students. So where I'm based at Sunway University and, based on a number of other institutions in Malaysia, hospitality and tourism education here has been something that is offered by quite a significant number of universities, and a lot of Malaysians go overseas to study hospitality and tourism. Not just, I should point out, to the UK or Australia, but number 3 for where Malaysians go is actually Taiwan. So you can begin to see that there's quite a different and interesting pattern here. Today, what I thought I would do is just share some reflections of my own experience and weave that into some of the challenges that I've personally experienced and that we've seen happen across different institutions. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about my personal link with one of our other ICE members, MCI, and I think this perhaps is quite an instructive sort of situation in terms of what sort of has happened and the challenges that institutions have had as we've gone through. So earlier this year, from most institutions around the world, we've seen going into some sort of lockdown, shutdown of institutions. What did that mean? I've been an adjunct visiting professor at MCI for probably coming on to about 14 years and a long-time member of the ICE. Myself, along with others such as John Fong, we go there and deliver a course of guest lectures over a period of a week. And I've been doing it actually since about 2006. And so that was actually my first group of students that I went there. And there's myself with Hubert and Susanna, who have been a great internationalization supporters of what MCI does. So the course I teach there is very hands-on. It's really working with the students in workshops. It runs 9 to 5, and it's been a great experience. But of course, this year, the world changed. So like many people, suddenly it was jumping in at the deep end to delivering online. And so whether you're an institution in Europe, North America, Asia, you suddenly went into that space. So in our context in Malaysia, where we went into our first lockdown, we were quite lucky. We had 2 weeks. Many institutions didn't even get 2 days to make that adjustment. And as you've already heard today, for programs in hospitality and tourism, with as we have here at Sunway University with a lot of practicals, has indeed been very challenging. Suddenly, no students. So the challenge was they went online, and we said to them, so we're going to put you online and we've got to follow them. And so rather than they come to us, we've got to go to them. And of course, the challenge is now, is first of all thinking of this from the student's point of view. And because many of those students weren't ever coming to class anymore, and suddenly this is now their lecture theatre. This was actually a project that was done by the University of Ulster, funnily enough, looking at student home spaces. And you can begin to see how this has suddenly changed. But this is the reality of the situation for many students now. This has become their lecture theatre, their tutorial space, etc. So we have to rethink things from their point of view. And one of my first challenges, as I was working both here in Malaysia and working with students in Austria, was this challenge of the issues of inclusivity. So one of the big issues of that is contact internet speed. So here in Asia, big challenges. And this was behind, I think, a lot of challenges being faced, particularly in certain institutions and colleges in the Philippines, where internet speeds are very low. And you can begin to see around the region, we still live in a very digitally divided world. So for those institutions who've got international students, such as we've got in Sunway, who we cannot get back into the country, we're still having to deliver to them. And this is very challenging because not only have we got time zone challenges, we've actually got issues of their connectivity as well as ours. So if you just look at this around Asia, for example, you've got the best connectivity in Singapore. The Philippines is working on basically a quarter of that. So you can begin to see some of the challenges that I know our colleagues in the Philippines have had when they suddenly were faced with sending their students back home and going online. This particular student was actually Malaysian. She made international news on the BBC because she ended up having to sit in a tree over in Sabah to be able to get the right connectivity on her 3G. And so you began to realize that this was, in some parts of the world, this was a really big challenge. And it was something perhaps we as universities couldn't control because this had a lot to do with the student situation. Now, the reality is, in many cases, we were going online and there was lots of discussions at universities, oh, well, the students like online learning, whatever. The reality was that most of our students are online already. The global average, as you can see here, is 6 hours and 12 minutes a day online. And our friends in the Philippines are the world leaders in this. They do an average of 10 hours and 2 minutes per day online, right? Now, the UK, paltry 5 hours and 45 minutes. In fact, the Japanese only do just over 3 hours and 45 minutes. So it wasn't that we were pushing students online. Dare I say, many of the students were already there. The challenge now was adapting to that. And you can begin to see here again on the, again, for social media, again, our friends in the Philippines were #1. And you can see they're spending over 4 hours a day just using social media. Again, Japan down at the other end of that spectrum. So even when we start to look at how we're changing our teaching and learning, we have to look at where our students are coming from, the norms in those different cultures as well. So part of the challenge of that is that putting everything online again, when the students are already online, and now you said, well, actually, you're doing 10 hours a day online already, and now you've got to come to university. I often wonder whether a lot of our students were sleeping, but maybe they're not. But this then presents us with a challenge from a teaching and learning point of view about how much time we and they are spending online, not just as academics, but also our students, and particularly our students. This is presenting us with significant challenges, I think, in terms of how we're going to have to think about our delivery. And this was a particular issue that Sunway University faced. We have got very high, typically in Asia, you've got much higher contact hours. So many of our students are doing 26 hours a week face-to-face on the campus. Now that can go down to, for some programs, around about 18, but we're a long way off where some other countries and universities would be at about 10, perhaps 12 hours a week. Now, my challenge with dealing with the back to Austria was beginning to think about how I could challenge that. And I began to find thinking that teaching was a bit like being in a boxing match. You know, it has 12 rounds, it lasts 8 minutes, and you get a break each time. So my challenge was how to pace that delivery because of the way MCI had got that set up. And I think whether we're students or staff, one of our challenges going forward now is how we start thinking about our delivery, how to take breaks. What is delivered synchronously? What is delivered asynchronously? How we're going to expect staff to sit for hours rather than standing to lecture, now sitting to lecture, and those sorts of issues. And in my case, our university, we would, well, I'll be honest, Sunway University was unprepared. Our staff's laptops did not even have microphones, let alone speakers. So when we suddenly went home, many people were doing their lectures off their home equipment, because the view very much, and for a lot of Asian universities, was what parents are paying for is the face-to-face. So suddenly when it goes online, this begins to change dramatically. So when we look at this, is the future of tourism. And so back to the situation in Austria, I had 60 students, 15 were from MCI. The rest of their students, the other 45, have gone exchange. So this was my group. And so the challenge now was they weren't all in Austria. And of course, neither was I, because I was sitting in KL. So I had students from 18 different countries. But the challenge was many of them were in Austria. Some had to go home. Some were stuck somewhere in between. So I suddenly found myself with students across 15 time zones, working with Birgit, who was at MCI, and with Bello Bala, who is actually based in Ghana. So we had the teaching staff on 3 continents. So the challenge now was how to develop and deliver that. And I think academic staff around the world are now walking into this space. So whereas before in our hotels, we'd talk about, oh, I've got guests from 30 countries in my hotel tonight, I've got staff from 20 countries. That's suddenly the reality that we're finding for a lot of academic teaching and learning in this spread, the geographic spread. So we had to take it online. The problem was we couldn't change the block teaching. We had those time zone challenges, breakout rooms, the lone lecturer problem, all those sorts of issues came up for us. And we had to find solutions, creative solutions, and whether it was working with MCI, whether it's been here at Sunway, where again, we've had to deal with those. What could we do on campus? The government then here allowed us to come back on campus at Sunway, but only 30% of students at any one time. So again, we had to prioritize practical classes versus lectures. So most of our lectures have stayed online. And so that is now taking us into a different space about thinking, what is it we need to do? For example, Sunway University at the moment, we're looking at building a new building, 9-story building across the road from the current campus. Our thinking had been to have many very large lecture theatres of 400 students. Well, our thinking has changed quite dramatically. So those are the sorts of issues that we're facing. So back to our situation with in Austria. And again, what I discovered was that a lot of students who were not using English were actually happier to type in forums. So when I work with students face to face, you always get the more outspoken ones. What I found was that by pacing the delivery, getting them to watch videos, suddenly my chat forum was full. And students seemed much happier at that. We've just been doing a 30-minute presentation before I came to join this one. We had over 500 students today using Zoom. We have more using YouTube. We had over 150 odd comments. We had 50, 60 questions in the Q&A today. So what we've discovered is that students sometimes, when English is their second language, find being able to put things in their own words is easier than it is perhaps speaking up in class. Now, this will present us with other challenges when we're going to have to put these students in front of guests. So we're going to have to think through some of those sorts of things as we go through. Now, as I mentioned, I started with Andy and Dr. Andy and Alan 30 minutes, and through that, we're great friends of the ICE through doing that. And as I just mentioned, many weeks we get hundreds of students who are joining us, many of them. And the reason we started 30 minutes was because we realized that many students were going to be suddenly studying at home, online, often with poor connectivity and content, which is another reason we stream it through YouTube, because of these inclusivity issues, which are particular issues in Asia. So working with those, we also found engaging other students in the international network. So they didn't feel they were studying alone. They weren't just one student at university, but it's actually part of a bigger network of students who are all globally in the same boat as they are. So I think hopefully that's given a few reflections on some of the challenges. Now, going forward, going forward from here, the question is going to be how I think as universities and institutions are going to be able to adapt to the situation that we're in. We were quite lucky at Sunway because Sunway Group has a whole raft of hotels. And so our internship issues have been somewhat helped through some of those connectivity. Interestingly, we've been exploring virtual internships, And in fact, I had one of my former students from Taylor's University on last week at 30 Minutes talking about a virtual internship. She worked with an organisation called Talent Basket, and they work with all sorts of organisations such as Airbnb, Tourism Fiji, Tourism Slovenia, etc., to help students get virtual internships and to use their research skills rather than focus more on the practical skills. So again, there are other solutions that we may find that are out there. So I'm going to end it there at that point. I think we've got a lot to discuss, and a lot of interesting issues have come up today. Craig, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Perry. I'm now able to put my my video on because it's dawn outside, so you can finally see me rather than having this blacked out sort of face. Thanks, Perry, for that interesting perspective. So I've been furiously scribbling down during the three presenters, and what I wanted to do as a basis for the discussion now, because we'd like to now basically turn it over to the attendees. We've got I think whatever 25 30 people from a multitude of countries right across our network joining us today, and what I want to do is to summarize, if you like, the key themes as I sort of picked up from the three presenters, and then hopefully engage comments and thoughts from all our attendees on these points, because I think as all our presenters identified, collaboration has increased through this crisis, and it sort of manifests itself in a number of different ways. And I think everyone also agrees that collaboration is the route to the future, and one of the sort of like routes possibly out of this. So as I saw it, the presenters sort of identified a number of key themes. I think the main sort of focus from institutions has been in terms of how we deliver, and that's been the main focus area. So the presenters identified that a number of institutions immediately, of course, moved to online delivery. It then perhaps evolved into elements of blended delivery, and also looking at different aspects within the curriculum and how to deliver that. So a number of institutions have had challenges with practical classes and internship, and the focus has been on, okay, how do we deliver what we currently have? So I think I think as a, you know, in my opinion, and certainly the impression I get from the panelists, this has consumed the greatest focus of all institutions and all thought, and possibly continues to consume the greatest focus. So the research that Sabrina identified about, okay, what are the challenges with online delivery? So there's challenges with social interaction and nuances and facial expressions. So how do we address that? How do we improve that? Perry identified sort of like the challenges with connectivity. How do we address that? How do we increase connectivity? How do we address the challenges with available IT resources? So for me, this has been the main focus area. What I'm not hearing, and I'm really interested to hear from the participants, is the what. What has been the changes to what we deliver? So have there been changes there, or perhaps is it too early to look at these changes? So we asked yesterday in a poll during our industry session, are you considering changing your curriculum in response to the COVID crisis? And 2/3 of people who responded said yes we are. But what changes are you making? Are you looking to maintain the internship? Because we heard from industry yesterday also that internships are going to be increasingly difficult, not just for this year, but for the foreseeable future. Because, and you know, so we're talking 2-3 years time, internships are going to be difficult. Are you changing those to just online, or are you reducing them, or perhaps getting rid of them altogether? So the what we deliver, I'd be really interested to hear from people, and also maybe the when. When the crisis first broke, one of the reactions was, okay, we'll either suspend certain classes, particularly the practical classes, and defer them till possibly when students can come back in. But now it's like, well, this looks like it's going to be longer term. So we find a way of doing the practical classes. But have institutions, have you sort of really looked at the when we deliver education and change that significantly? And I'm thinking here of some of the things we started to touch on yesterday in terms of the way we structure education. Because if students are studying as intensively as Perry identified, maybe the duration of our courses can be reduced significantly. Is that a possibility of institutions looking at this? Maybe the way we sort of structure the blocks also can be developed significantly, changed significantly. So those are the sort of things that I'd be really interested to hear from our participants. Sort of changes in what we deliver in the curriculum, changes in when we're delivering this. So I made a list of what taking the classical sort of SWOTs of analysis. I made a list of threats that we are addressing, but also opportunities. Now I'll just run through those, and then we'll move into the panel sessions, or the wider discussion sessions. So Sabrina identified threats through a lack of and a low social interaction. There is still a threat or a challenge related to practical classes. I know working with DCT and others that there are solutions to this, but how successful are they? I think there's a major threat in relation to maintaining student numbers. And that's related to also the threat of the image of hospitality as a career. And we heard from the industry that they're sort of worried about this, that the fact that will students and possibly their parents continue to see hospitality as a viable career given the impact of this crisis. I think also there's a threat and a challenge related to perceived value of money, of money invested in studies. And again, we saw this through some of the research presented yesterday, particularly in the UK. The UK students are very, very unhappy with the perceived value on investment in terms of their money invested in studies. It's much higher in places like Germany, but I think this will continue to be a theme where it's going, well, if I'm not coming to Co-Palace, if I'm only getting this online, surely I should be getting a reduction for this. Surely it shouldn't be costing you as much to deliver this. And Perry went through a whole heap of issues and challenges related specifically to online learning. So if our response is keep it online, well, then we've got to really address all those challenges addressed online. The flip side is opportunities. John sort of, and again, all our panelists mentioned interaction and increasing interaction through this crisis. One thing, as I say, that's definitely that resulted through this is just a blossoming of connections and interactions. And something that I've heard from many of the members also is that because they can't operate internationally, they've intensified their local connections, particularly with industry. In places like Dubai, they're finding that their interactions with industry are actually enhanced, and they've got a much stronger and deeper relationship with industry than they had prior to the crisis. So I was wondering if that's been sort of replicated elsewhere. Greater collaboration with all sorts of different partners. John identified UK NARIC working with us, HOSCO working with us, and I see great collaboration, as I say, being the way for the future. John mentioned increased engagement with students, and I've heard this several times, that actually far from sort of being distanced from students, you actually have a greater sort of connection with students, and this clearly is an opportunity. I think research and blossoming research in improving the online delivery is an area of opportunity. Also developing what IT tools are available to us, and exploring new sort of like platforms as Perry identified, and using those platforms for delivery as an opportunity. So there's definitely sort of a series of continuing threats out there, but there's also balancing that an area of opportunities. But perhaps we can I'd love to hear sort of from the audience as to where they see the long-term changes here, and particularly maybe whether people are looking at changing their curriculum and, as I say, changing the timing of the delivery. Can I go back to the panelists to kind of kickstart that and hear from the panelists whether they've seen anything about major changes to the curriculum, major changes to the timing, if you like, of the curriculum delivery? Perhaps I'll go back to Serena. Is that something that you're considering at NKUHT?
Actually, as I just shared just now, that something really happened before this pandemic. Okay, so that's what you mentioned about the major change. We start to consider transfer. Maybe transfer the course online is not that difficult because maybe the Wi-Fi, the internet coverage in Taiwan is okay, and students have the facilities. But we actually really consider the big change about the curriculum, or even consider, because I just mentioned the so-called sandwich style. Do you remember our students go to the internship? But from the industry, they really want us to move this third year internship to fourth year, so they can connect, they can have the talents better. So a lot of discussion in our university, but we still think that the internship is for students to explore this career, and then they should come back. I mean, from this 1 year experience to check if they are going to really have this as their career, or if they really need to strengthen which part of their ability, so they take some more courses. So that's what I want to respond to you, not only because let's put something online, we really consider the contents. Okay, and also we see the change of the job positions from the change of the technology enhanced environment. So when they come back to our, after the internship, they come back to our university, we will have the discussion with our students. They will share the experiences they're working in the industry. So these years, we not only working on a distant learning, but this is really interesting that the governments really have a lot of budgets for this online learning for the past decade already. But this time it's like everybody are forced to do it. Okay, so I'm just worried about the quality. Actually, that's still my concern. And I just want to respond to your question, like not only the modality of delivering, but also the contents. Now really like it's time for us to consider it as a whole. Yeah,
absolutely. Thanks, Sabrina. Interestingly, so one of the things you're considering is moving the internship from year 3 to year 4. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah, there are some discussions like several years ago already, but most of our teachers still insist that we should keep it in a third year. Yeah, so that still.
So basically, there's no consideration of removing the internship or replacing the internship. We want to keep it.
We will keep it. Yes, we are lucky because domestically we still have enough job positions for our students who have their internship. Right. Yeah, but of course the position may not fit their major perfectly like before. Yes, yeah, but maybe the number of the job position are still enough for our students. So we will keep on have that, because students really say something like this: we come to UNCUT because the design of your curriculum because of this 1 year internship. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we will try our best to maintain it. Yes.
I absolutely recognise that from my time at Stendon and other institutions, the critical importance of the internship, not only to the students but to the industry. There's a really high value placed on the internship as preparing students effectively for the industry. I think that's why it's such a difficult element, because obviously institutions are inclined to maintain it for that. John, can I just turn to you? Thank you, Sabrina, and see how you're dealing with it, with that the issue of curriculum. Are you planning to make major changes? What are you doing with your internship? Because you have a 6 month in, 6 month out at some places.
It's a fantastic question, Craig, because of course we need to make changes, and if we don't change and don't evolve, we get left behind. And this was raised yesterday as well, that, you know, often people up until 1 or 2 years ago used to think it was quite normal to have, you know, a year-long lead period or even longer to introduce the new item or to develop a curriculum and to get that signed off and approved by university partner and so on and so forth. But in the current scenario, I don't think that's really realistic. We, you know, all of the research that we read says we need to be adaptable, we need to be agile, we need to move fast. So I do think what we're struggling with and what we're achieving in many cases is to try and break down some of those bureaucratic barriers with industry, with university partners, and to rethink, or a word I love is actually reimagine, you know, how teaching, learning and curriculum might change. So have we brought changes in? Yes, we have. Before this, we had a very good advisory board, and they, like a year back, they said, oh, you need to put crisis and risk management onto your curriculum. So we did bring that on. But now we're engaging with industry, you know, and saying, okay, well, what are the new positions, given the new type of demand from the new type of customer? What are the new jobs that you're going to need in the hotel, and therefore what might be new that needs to go onto the curriculum, and therefore what new type of internships could they be? So one thing that's been interesting for us is, you know, obviously we can't kill the internship experience. It's critical to the learning, but maybe the type of internship, like 1 or 2 of the other speakers alluded to, may change. You know, this whole idea of an online internship for jobs in hospitality that might be online, the whole idea of delivering online service, the whole idea of netiquette, the whole idea of, you know, virtual communities, virtual collaborations. These will be critical skills probably in hotels going forward. Yesterday, one of the speakers talked about, you know, 5 years ago, maybe, 5 or 6 years ago, maybe a bit further back, the whole idea of revenue management was new to hotels and new to curriculum, and it was something that just happened in the reservations department, whereas now it's central to the hospitality educational curriculum, and it's a very senior role in hotels. So probably I suspect through engagement with university partners and hospitality partners, we can know quite quickly through research what the necessary changes are. The challenge, because of the systems that we have in place, and these are the things that education needs to break down, I think, in the next couple of years, is all of those approvals and kind of signings off that you need to go through before you can make a change to curriculum. And I suspect those schools who are able to adapt faster and are more agile and listen and implement fast to students, to industry, and to university partners and government, all of the important stakeholders, will be the ones that tend to come out shiny at the end of this crisis. So that's what we're trying to do, in some cases more successful than others, but in all cases, increased dialogue with increased communities, as you've been emphasizing, has been a positive and a way forward. So
Right.
The internships is the tricky one, especially the practical elements. And we did look at doing stuff online. Another way to flip that and look it over, if you can't do the physical online training, maybe you can delay that, do it at another time. The other thing is to look at the learning outcome, you know, as opposed to the actual process. If you look at your 10 credit module and it's got these 5 learning outcomes, well, if you cannot achieve those learning outcomes by going to a restaurant or a hotel, can you achieve those learning outcomes in another way? Maybe by community service, maybe by voluntary work, maybe by online, maybe by probably a hybrid of those, where you might do something in school, something with the local community, and a reflective report, which shows at the end that you still achieve the learning outcomes, but maybe in a different way. So I think there are ways around it, but we need to be honest, at the end of the day, the student, especially in international hotel schools, what they purchase is the experience. So no matter how good we are coming up with solutions, students want face-to-face, and they want to be in the hotel interacting, with the other staff and having that famous, teaching and learning experience, which hospitality education is favorite for, so famous for.
Yeah.
So that's the reality at the end of the day. We do need to be agile. We do need to come up with these solutions. Students and parents of students are still going to say, maybe I'm going to wait a couple of years until I can do a real internship in a real hotel. So that's
thanks, John. Really interesting, because I think some of the things you're touching on there in terms of looking at accrediting other forms of learning. So whether, as you say, it's voluntary work, whether it's also, and I know that there's not much part-time work existing in many contexts, national contexts, because of the sort of shrinkage of the hospitality industry. But we in my experience, institutions have been reluctant, to say the least, of crediting work done alongside study, so part-time work or work done before study. And they've been sort of reluctant to do that, and said, no, you have to gain your experience during your internship, and we'll only credit that. So I'm wondering whether there's possibilities of looking at other elements of work, other types of work. We spoke yesterday about the relationship through HOSCO of lobster Inc. and all the huge wealth of training videos that are available there. I wonder if by completing a series of those videos, whether that could be offset against some of the internship, for example. But one thing that you mentioned and also springs to my mind is we're perceived possibly to be doing less and less. As the educators, we're perceived to be doing less and less, and more is done by the students. Oh, I have to go and study lobster Inc. now, and I have to go and work part-time elsewhere. And what you're saying, that's part of the education that I'm paying for, so the perceived value possibly is also reducing there. So there's a solution, but there's also a challenge. But yeah, it's those sorts of things that I think maybe, like you say, agile, nimble institutions might need to start considering. Perry, I'm interested, have you come across sort of like institutions grappling with this and coming up with solutions to what will it deliver? So curriculum changes?
Oh, absolutely. And let me add that this is not just something for hospitality and tourism. Academics have the discussion. There is now, I think, at a much broader level, universities now having to stand back and question what it is that they're actually, the value they're providing. Now, speaking with my Sunway hat on, yes, we're a private institution. And when I joined Sunway, I remember having a very early discussion last year with someone asking why we weren't doing blended learning, which had been something that was common in my previous institution, where we pushed it ahead about 5 or 6 years earlier. We had 1 week every semester where everything had to be done online. And I was told blankly, well, we won't be doing that. I said, well, why not? They said, that's because that's not what parents and students are paying for. They're paying for face-to-face delivery. And if we don't give it to them, they're not going to be paying for it, period. Now, my feeling is, so I said, well, okay, but we do get things like smogs and what other reasons that the university shut down, actually. So basically, we were not in a position to have that. And that showed a really cocoon thinking to me. And I think we have got to open this up, because I'm seeing my colleagues in the arts and the sciences embracing a lot of this. I've got my School of Arts, who is now bringing in regularly performers from, in fact, we were supposed to have one in doing a hybrid this week, where we were going to have a classic pianist coming in from Victoria in New Zealand, Victoria University in New Zealand. We were going to have the New Zealand ambassador at the campus. Unfortunately, that got knocked on the head because of our new movement control order. But what it was showing to me was that other schools are thinking outside the box. We've got virtual biology practicals, etc., etc. Our School of Arts is already working very strongly on virtual reality. Now, I've been a great proponent of VR. In fact, I wrote my first tourism article about VR in 1994. Now, I hate to sound like a clock that's always going to be right twice a day, but I think the time is going to come where we can bring in that kind of technology, and we can bring in that kind of training. And listening to the panel yesterday, where they were saying, we want people to come in who can multitask, do this, do that. And I was sitting there listening to that panel yesterday going, how the hell are we going to do this at home? We're also going to need to bring in new technology. Our industry was not very technology savvy. I remember learning the Whitney rack system when I first walked into a hotel. We then went online, but it was largely the marketers that went online because it was the business, the sales end. The operations didn't move that much. Now the operations are having to, and I saw a report the other day, OYO from India, they said we've got a work at home policy now. Now, if you can imagine saying to a hotel chain, you're going to have a work at home policy, they said, you nuts. This has brought this disruption. So we've seen disruption come through industry after industry. So Airbnb disrupted the hotel industry. Now COVID has disrupted Airbnb. Universities education have been quite immune to this. And I think we got very, very complacent about it. And it's not just hospitality and tourism. And so this will bring enormous amount of change. So just looking at the comments, I can see Tina there asking about collaboration. So just as I was mentioning about this classical pianist, why do we not have more of that? Now, I've been lecturing at MCI for 14 years. Now, there's no reason now everyone suddenly got comfortable with the fact that Perry can do it online, but I suspect you or Paul or anybody else who's listening today is quite capable of doing that if we get them the right training and support and work out how to do that. So the collaboration in the past, I'm going to give a slight plug because I'm speaking next week at what's called EduTech in Singapore, virtually of course, on collaboration versus competition. What should be your internationalization strategy? And part of that presentation, which I've already given, even though it's not for 2 weeks, it's been recorded and uploaded, so it's all there. It's been about how you can collaborate now through teaching, because before we were competitive when it came to student recruitment, but universities were very collaborative when it came to doing research. Teaching was always somewhere in between, because our academic staff were ours. We didn't really want to share it, but now we can. The question is going to be how comfortable are we going to be doing that and making sure that content is relevant to our students, because what's relevant to a student in Europe may not be as relevant to someone, say, sitting in Asia, given the context of the subject. But in other cases, it could be highly relevant. So I think we have to redefine how we're thinking about education and think much bigger than this. And remember, the iPhone has just come out with 5G. So even our students who are all going to have these little devices in their pockets are now going to expect that to be upgraded. How are we going to upgrade our delivery to be with that?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, Perry, because I'm just looking at the comments and Tina sort of saying, how can we use, how can we encourage collaborations? How can we use the ICE to sort of facilitate collaboration? And I think there's something in that, you know, is it collaboration? Is it competition? I very firmly see the future and sustainability and survival in the future being through collaboration as opposed to competition. And I see sort of like you're identifying the opportunity to have content produced by and for academics in other institutions and incorporating that within your programs. Can add wealth, depth, value to your programs, and also possibly I think will be seen by students of, oh wow, this is a lecture I wouldn't have got
exactly.
the opportunity to see normally at wherever at this particular institution. So yes, they're using online, but I'm getting additional value. So it does address this sort of perceived value sort of question of students and parents. So I think that form of collaboration certainly is a feature of the future, and the most nimble, going back to John's point, the most nimble and agile institutions that are able to sort of like do this effectively, quickly and effectively are going to be the ones that I think will win this sort of like value for money, continuing appeal of online battles. So really interesting.
I think so. If I can just tell you, because I remember, I grew up in Surrey, just south of London. The University of Surrey has got a pretty well-known hospitality school. One of the rules of the University of Surrey was that you had to live within a 30-mile radius of the campus. That was a condition of employment. We're now looking at that globally with technology, and you would go, are you barking mad in this day and age to have had that sort of rule? So we've got to rethink, I think, quite dramatically. So when you say, what's the value I'm adding, as you just pointed out, and said, well, actually, The value you've got of coming to institution A, B, or C, or ones associated with the ICE, is because guess what? You get to hear from all the lecturers from around the world who are specialists on these topics. And if you want to, so one of the reasons MCI has done it that way is that each week you get a different global lecturer. The challenge has been we've got to fly there, which is very harmful on the environment, sad to say. It's very time consuming. In fact, I spend more time on the aeroplane than I do in the classroom, et cetera, et cetera. So by rebalancing that, we could rethink about how we do our staffing and delivery. So if each of us as an institution said, we're going to share these lecturers and these time zones and in these particular courses, and I'm already working on some projects on virtual exchange, etc., to allow those sorts of things to happen, so we can mix students from different universities and mix faculty and staff together. And I think this time, you know, as they say, there's a silver lining to every cloud.
Yeah.
COVID's a big cloud. Let's find the silver lining.
Okay, I'm interested in hearing from the other attendees whether people have already made sort of steps in this direction. So please, if you're already working with increased collaboration, if you're already working with changing your curriculum, possibly your internship, but certainly other elements, then I'd be really welcome to hear from other people. So please raise your hand if I think this is the method we used yesterday, Jane, to identify if you want to contribute to this, if you want to share your experiences. I'm not seeing anything yet.
What I might do in the meantime, while people get brave to raise their hands.
Oh, yeah. Sarah has. Can we bring in Sarah from Derby, Jane? She's got a microphone. There we go. I think I heard your voice. Good
morning, everyone.
Go on, Sarah. So
Hi. Just to say, yes, we are working on a number of projects in relation to helping our students get an international experience when they can't travel. So we're looking at a program where students can do a virtual Erasmus exchange. So that's something that we're working with some of our European partners, so that students can still go and do Erasmus and study with students. For example, a number of our students go to Stenden University in the Netherlands, and we're looking at opportunities where we can still do those sorts of things virtually. So they join a class online virtually in the institution that they want to exchange to. So that's one area that we're working on. Another area is where we can work on what we call COIL projects, where students can collaborate together on a particular project or a scenario that has been set by industry. And we bring together some of our collaborative partners from around the world for students to work together on a particular project, and that tends to link into one of their modules. So we are starting to look at ways in which students can still get an international experience. The other thing, I just want to take you back to something that John said, and that was around the decline in student numbers going to university. What we found is that we've seen a bit of a decline in our international student numbers, but actually for our home students, we've had more students come to university because they can't do the gap year, for example, or jobs are very difficult. So we've seen an upturn in some of our domestic student numbers. So just to take you back to that point. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, again, two really interesting sort of trends there, sort of like the again, further evidence of the desire and also the opportunities for collaboration. And I think Perry made the point, but it's very obvious that it's not just us as academic hospitality tourism institutions that are seeking collaboration. I'm sensing a real sort of willingness for other people. They're also going, yeah, well, we want to as well, and the time is right. So I think there really is this kind of wave of opportunities for collaboration that we can and we should ride on to increase the opportunities. And the point you made about domestic opportunities in this case, in the terms of students replacing international students, as I say, the other element of that is also domestic industry also have a willingness to, if you like, fill the gap from the international sort of chains, and I've heard that from elsewhere. So maybe that's the trend for the future, that we, sort of, despite the fact we always say we're the most international industry, perhaps we'll see a greater domestic and local stroke regional focus in the future. But thanks for sharing that, Sarah. I saw Harold.
Craig, if I might just quickly jump in there, because I think Sarah's made a really good point that there are virtual internship, or what's called COIL. In fact, there's a workshop on about that tomorrow night. If anyone, I'll try and get the details to pop that in the chat, that you can join about those. And they're a great way forward. Remember that when it came to student mobility, most institutions got excited if they got to 20%. The UK, for example, average student mobility 6.5%, okay, which is a commitment in the UK to double it to 13. The European average under Bologna was 20. Only the Germans were doing much better. They got it up to about 40%. But then you still got to ask the question, well, what about the other 60%? Or in most cases, the other 90%? What were you doing for them? If typically nothing. So then that raises an interesting question about how to internationalize the rest of the student body. Now, MCI's view was, the reason I went to teach there was because they said, well, we've got always about 25% who won't go. So they had a very high level of internationalization. But they all said, well, the percentage who can't go, we need to do something for them. So we'll bring the world to them, which was 75% of the classroom and a different lecturer, such as myself, John Fong, etc., every week. And so that was their way of dealing with that. And I think this gives us a great opportunity to really be bold. And whilst everyone else is reeling, it's a good opportunity, I think, to start rethinking some of these things. Because my fear is that I've been dealing with some academics who just go, oh, the world's in a terrible place. Everything's going to go to hell in a handbasket. It's, the sky's fallen in. Nothing's ever going to be the same again. Well, perhaps it wasn't that great in the first place. We may have gone from, we may have no tourism, but remember 18 months ago, our focus would have been about over-tourism. So how do we get a balance when we go forward? How do we want to see the future? How do we want to envision the future of education? How would we like to see it, given now what we know? Because a year ago, at the panel of experts, we couldn't even have this conversation. In fact, I think, Craig, if you'd stood on stage as CEO and director of the ICE and said, you know what, guys, next year you're all going to be online, I think you'd be laughed out of the room, right? The reality is we're in a very different space now. So rather than get back-footed by the space, let's think about how we can get on some of the front foot. And some of the things we were doing, as we heard yesterday from the industry. I mean, they didn't want to be too critical, those guys, but they were like, well, maybe you should refocus what you're doing. I mean, they were being quite pleasant there. But they were really trying to send, I think, a bit of a message saying, well, actually, what you thought was a priority wasn't what we thought was a priority. Mm-hmm. And the time it takes to change our courses, I was dealing with my UK partner university, which has got various campuses around the world. Currently, it takes 2 years. 2 years is their approvals process for a course. Now, so it's not just hospitality and tourism that's going to wake up and say, wow, we've got a challenge here. Universities themselves are going to have to get their head around the fact this is an issue. Yeah. Okay. And
that's... yes, go John. Yes, sorry.
Very quickly, just very quickly, I think Perry's kind of hit the nail on the head there. This is our biggest opportunity, but also our biggest challenge. I think what he's talking about basically here is mindsets, and having this, as Carol Dweck talks about, a growth mindset, willingness to change. And a lot of us so-called academics, as we're called, as we're put in this academic basket, are kind of, a lot of those people, maybe myself included, tend to be stuck in their ways, and this is the way we've done things, and this is the COVID, that's nothing to do with me, so we'll just have to wait until it goes away. But if we can find a transition into academic leaders having a different mindset, which is more growth focused, and I read something recently on the whole idea of academic entrepreneurship, so these academic entrepreneurs, and looking at, looking at the customer instead of the product, maybe, instead of always thinking about the research and the course, what do our customers need, and what can I do as an academic leader to change the academic provision to make it more attractive to all these new needs that our customers have, and thinking a bit more like an entrepreneur and a bit less like an academic might be a way to navigate our way through this this challenge, and with a different put a different kind of cap on your head. You know,
Indeed.
people who are in the community are kind of the program leaders who have to sign off on things. So they're the ones who are sometimes the roadblocks. But maybe we need to, you know, look at bridges instead of roadblocks.
Yeah.
So interesting point.
Absolutely. No, great points, John and Perry. I mean, just to build on what Perry was saying, if it takes 2 years to make the change, bearing in mind that we've got a 3-year, 4-year program, it takes 5 or 6 years before that change impacts on the industry. I mean, the industry does not think in 5 or 6 year change periods. It thinks in 6 month, 1 year change period. So absolutely, I think that this is a key message that's coming through this. So a point that Sarah made yesterday in the comments was that what COVID has shown us is that actually, whereas we think, and to some extent are right in the fact that academic institutions are very staid and very conservative and very slow moving, we've changed overnight in terms of how we deliver. So we went from face-to-face to online delivery. Not always successfully, but we've got increasingly successful as we've gone along, and we've adapted, and that's incredible. As Perry said, no one would have ever believed that would be possible, but we did it. And we did it, you know, as I say, relatively successfully, very successfully in many cases. So it shows actually we can be nimble, we can be agile, but I think what we need to do now is extend that nimbility and agility into other areas, and then sort of say, look, we need, as John said, we need to perhaps be a little bit more flexible and entrepreneurial in other areas in terms of, you know, what we deliver and how we make up our programs. Brian has got his hand up, and you made a point earlier about Sabrina being pioneers in MOOCs and the development of those materials. I'm wondering whether his point's going to be about incorporating MOOCs and other sort of possibly micro credentials within our curriculums. But Brian, can I bring you in to speak? Jane, can you make Brian able to speak? There we go. I think he's can we hear you, Brian? Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Brian.
Yeah, thanks. So the thing I posted is actually a question to Sabrina. The point I was going to make is a different one. So I'll not.
Okay, sorry.
Want to ask the question, or would you like me to make the other contribution that I was going to make?
I'd make the other contribution, please. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Craig. Well, thanks to all the panelists. Really interesting comments. What I thought I'd just share with you is I'm juggling this conference with another one, and I just want to share my observations of what's happening downstairs. So what's happening downstairs was what should have been in Kaohsiung, actually, and it's the APAC CRE conference, and regrettably that one didn't go ahead in Kaohsiung, and then eventually it came to PolyU and it was postponed. And finally, it's taken place. The reason I want to share it is it finished up as a hybrid event. And I want to say, I think hybrid really is the way to go now. So the last 2 days, we've had only about probably 40 people kind of in the room, and then about another 150 coming online, and the speakers being some in the room again, and some being external. So this is a final year student group. They're doing this subject conference organizing as part of their learning exercise. And just at lunchtime with my colleagues, I was talking about, you know, what are the students getting from this? And what I would say is, of course, the delegate numbers are not as big as normal, things are not perfect, etc. But from a student learning point of view, the hybrid is really good for them, because, you know, we're all learning, we're all making mistakes. Hopefully we're doing it okay. We've got students who are acting as butlers to the VIPs, you know, they're doing the face-to-face, they're really interactive stuff, but also the students are listening attentively for the speakers coming in from Cornell, from all other places over the world. They're literally serving a small number of us at the lunch in the F&B and so on. And this whole adventure, and then they're even preparing the little transparent masks for the speakers, but they're making them. And it's just a very interesting experiment for students dealing with hybrid events, getting the best of the international speakers that, as Terry has said, are not having to fly internationally. They're still coming in from their home base. And so I think it's quite exciting to go through this experience. We'll see what the delegate response is. Do they love it? Do they think it's okay? But at least the whole principle about the students learning, then providing high quality service, and it all coming together. And just before I finish, one observation, Terry's comments about Austria reminded me of, I used to travel from Australia every year to teach a master's group in Sardinia, Italy. And they used to bring so, eminent, supposedly, professors from all over the world who'd be parachuted in for a week to be in this room with all Italian speakers who were desperate to get a little slice of the world. And I'd talk to them about like Asia Pacific, show them a few PPTs. But if I imagined, eventually that ran out because of lack of funds, of course. But if I imagine that was running today, it would be completely different, because I would not have to travel all the way from Australia there. And it wouldn't just be me, we'd be having people with much better insights than me coming in, sharing that with the students. Then, as Terry has said, they have the 5.0 on their phones. They'd be able to get virtual experiences of India, China, wherever. And I think the opportunities there are fabulous. And so we, as these supposed jet-setting scholars, Terry, I, all the rest, we really need to adjust our thinking. A lot of the time it's going to be staying at home, thinking of it from the student's point of view, what's going to be the best learning experience, and that's going to be very, very diverse. So I think back to my original point, I think that the hybrid is really exciting, and it's going to force all of us to rethink how we're doing things.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate that. What I'm going to do is follow up, now put your original question as a follow-up to Sabrina, if I may, because Brian made the point that NKUHT have been sort of forerunners in developing MOOCs. Is there any consideration of making MOOCs part of the academic program and making them credit bearing? Is that been considered as part of this kind of evolution of the curriculum?
You mean the MOOCs? We have the, just as what I have said, that the Minister of Education really give us a lot of budget to promote the MOOCs, but it's the hybrid one. Yes, so we will have like, we have, each semester we have 18 weeks, so we will have like 12 weeks in the MOOCs, like online, but still we will have 6 weeks for face-to-face instruction. Yeah, so that's okay. What, yeah, the past practice. But I think most of the MOOCs right now for our university, starting from the culinary part, that's quite interesting. The culinary.
Oh, it is interesting. Yeah, it is.
And then they share it in the open platform. So they kind of would like invite more people to learn the cooking or the bakery courses. But we still insist that we have 6 weeks face-to-face to make sure students really can ask questions, especially if those that very skill-based, maybe they still need to see the demonstration from the teachers. Yeah.
And just to clarify, are the MOOCs that you're producing and presenting, are they part of they're part of this sort of accredited program that the students study at? Okay. And are you aware of whether they are also credited by other institutions? Are they credit bearing?
I'm not sure about others, but in addition to those MOOCs, we have so-called digitalized courses supported again by the university. So they may be not in MOOCs form, but they have kind of make it online courses. And in this case, the teachers can have apply for their promotion if they have certain courses digitalized.
Right.
So that's what the practice in our university. But in addition to this, I know that it's a trend, but I still want to say I quite like, I remember there's a policy called No Children Left Behind in decades ago. No children left behind in the reading program, right? But I still I want to say that in this period of time, no students left behind, and also no teachers left behind. Because I can observe that maybe some teachers won't voice their difficulty to deliver these online courses. We're talking about this, the trend or the long-term normal, but still I can observe that because the average years of the teachers, we are like more close to the previous generation, right? The younger teachers are more close to the digital generation. Sorry, no, that's it. But if this is the truth, I still believe some percentage of the teachers in the university will have difficulty handling this change. They are forced to do it. So that's what I want to point out, that we still need to give teachers enough support.
Absolutely. There's again two excellent points there, Sabrina. I think the change to online has obviously been foisted on us, and there can be a tendency to say, oh, we're already there, we've done it, you know, what was the problem? But I suspect behind that, as we go more online and as but why don't you use this form of social media? Why don't you use this new platform? I suspect there's a number of sort of academics that go, oh no, I've only just managed to do this. Please don't let me do anything more, because I'm really way out of my comfort zone here. So I think that care and consideration of academics, the training that John referred to, and the retraining, and maybe a switching of roles for certain academics that you know just don't feel comfortable with engaging with this, but there's all sort of pastoral care behind the scenes that perhaps that they'd be more comfortable with. So this may actually result in a long-term sort of like shifting of roles and responsibilities within our academic teams as well. But the point made me sorry.
Yeah, one more point, that teamwork. I really think that's something
absolutely
that should be emphasized. That if really at this time people, some teachers are more good at technology, can support those others, I think they can make it happen easily.
Absolutely. It's collaboration within institutions as well as across institutions. I mean, I'm really interested in the point you made about the MOOCs, because I think it's so interesting that programs that are developed by NKUH2 as a leading institution are recognized by your institution as being part of your program, and therefore accredited, have gone through all the sort of your quality systems. May it be being used as supplementary elements within other courses, and not embedded within those courses as being credit bearing. And again, I think that the future is surely has got to be about as being sort of more sort of like inclusive in terms of using content from elsewhere. And this is challenging. I know it's challenging to institutions, because they're like, well then why am I paying this lecturer if I can get that content from over there? You know, so I know there's all sorts of sort of licensing issues, and there's all sorts of like financial issues, but that surely has got to be the future, where we start to be embedding content and lecturers from elsewhere in our credit bearing elements of our program, because it can only add value. So rather than using it on top, you actually embed it in the programs.
Yeah, if I might, Craig, just come in on that, because again, looking at this from a big institutional point of view, I was on what was called a brain date the other day for the Australian International Education Conference, and it's a bit like a round table forum, bit like this. You'll have 5 people in them. And one of those individuals was from University in Australia, based in Brisbane. And one of the issues that came out from his discussion with me was, he said, well, we've realized that perhaps we've got too many small things in our university. Now, and I think because he knows I was in hospitality and tourism, he said, for example, our university doesn't offer hospitality and tourism, but why don't we work with another university who could deliver that as a minor for us? Now, you can imagine there's going to be a few universities out there who've got 3 or 4 academics who work in hospitality and tourism, bit of a small area. Well, why would you do that going forward with this? So taking my point, a lot of universities took the view they were a bit like Apple. They were a walled garden. You didn't let anybody in. You know, if you came in, you were lucky to be able to transfer credit. Most universities, particularly in the UK, really didn't like you bringing credit in. Some did, but a lot do not. Other systems have been more open. US universities' system tends to be more open to people bringing in transfer credit. Even if you look at Malaysian institutions, 2/3 of Malaysians who go to the UK take some form of credit with them. Now, taking this forward, therefore, you could see a university saying, look, we've decided that we're going to be really good at, let's say, 6 things. We're not going to have 60 departments, which some universities have. We're just going to concentrate on those, and then we will work with our other universities, part of our network, to deliver in our area in biological sciences or marketing or whatever the academic area might be. And so this may bring a huge change, because let's face it, there's at least 25,000 universities in the world. Okay? Now the UK thinks it's got a lot, it's got 150. Japan's got 750. India has got 1,000. Indonesia, I know, has got about 2,500. The US, 3,500. So we're all going to keep doing the same stuff. I mean, you haven't got that many car companies all doing the same stuff, and they're all consolidating behind the scenes to build different parts for different cars. I suspect this is where we'll probably see some things going.
Yeah, really, really good, interesting comment, Perry, because I also, that's baffled me for years as to why we believe only our institution, only our academics has the right way to do whatever revenue management and marketing, when quite clearly there's experts over here that do it so much more effectively. Why not use those? And there was a comment from Tina about what can the ICE do as part of this collaboration. Well, we're all now members of this network. We've all passed the standards of the ICE and engaged with this. So maybe this collaboration can start within the ICE network, where we do start to sort of like really bring bones to this collaboration, add flesh to this collaboration in terms of incorporating elements within our programs, and sort of saying, yep, I will take this element from here, and I will recognise it and credit it within my program. And maybe, as I say, the ICE's network is a great way to start that process, because it definitely, in my opinion, it is where the future's going. For us to all continue to do the same thing, it just seems madness. But anyway, that's okay. I'm really aware that the time is moving on. I'm going to end this part of it and then hand over to Paul for the wrap up. But before I do, I'd just like to thank all the 3 panelists, Sabrina, John, Perry, for your input today, for your wisdom and your expert knowledge. And for others for engaging with what I think has been a very stimulating and very useful discussion. Thank you all. Now I'll hand over to Paul to do the wrap up of the IPO this year. Thank you.
Terrific. Thanks, Craig. And may I extend my thanks to Sabrina, John and Perry for your very significant contributions, and also to Brian and Sarah and other colleagues for your questions that really did give us a lot of food for thought. If I may, I'd like to keep the conversation going for just one quick point. Perry, your comment about the cars is a really interesting analogy, in that you're quite correct. There are 7 or 8 major automobile brands in the world, but many of them are owned by the same people, and yet there is a massive proliferation of component manufacturers who then sell what they call their white labeled or their house brand components to the manufacturers, and it does make me think that maybe there is something in there, in that the universities will, to use the terminology, white label the content from specialist content producers, and then badge and label the qualifications. And one of the things that really strike me with this is, and this is something I bang on about a lot, is that our core business is actually not teaching. Our core business is our license to grant certificates, assure learning, and issue certificates or diplomas or testamas of some description. And so it does make me think that maybe this is what we're going to see emerging over the next few years. That's an invitation for your thoughts.
Yep. I think you may well be right there, Paul. And I think to continue that analogy on a little bit, we've seen disruption in cars with the arrival of Tesla over new technology. And one of the reasons I think so many car companies are working together at the moment is because they don't know whether it'll be electric, hydrogen, whatever. There's various other platforms out there, and they're all trying to hedge their bets to work out what's going to work. And I think you're quite right. We need to work out how we can take that forward. I mean, cars, you could say their core business is moving people from A to B, but again, they have to all meet their licensing requirements to be able to go on the road. And so if we want to take that forward even further, here's the next challenge for us, because a lot of those future cars won't actually need a driver. So where does the student sit in all this? Because, or the lecturer, you could ask, because if the lecturer is being the driver of the car education, we're already seeing chatbots emerge in all sorts of other industries. So, you know, how might this roll forward as well? We saw a great case recently, which only came out in the court records over the situation with Ashley Madison in the US, where this was a wonderful dating site and lots of guys were getting very excited at meeting all these wonderful ladies. Unfortunately, the site never signed up enough ladies, so they actually empowered the chatbots to chat to the guys. Unfortunately, or interestingly, the chatbots did better than the real ladies. So again, we mustn't assume that just because we're the lecturers at the moment, we're doing a great job, that technology, again, will not change things. So I hate to be so controversial, but thought-provoking in this, because we've really got to think, and I think you're, you know, to bring that point out, where in this new ecosystem, given technology, where can we add the best value, and how can the ICE as a collaborative network, could we bring the strength we've got as an organization in a collegial way, but also remember that many of us are facing very different situations around the world in terms of being public, private, and so forth. I think there's going to be some challenges out there, and I look forward to the ICE taking, you know, a step forward in how we might go forward into what I think is going to be a pretty brave new world, given this disruption that COVID has brought us. But thank you.
Thanks for that, Perry. Sabrina or John, would you like to offer further thoughts? Sabrina first. Mute. Sorry, you're on mute. There we go.
Yeah, no, not so far, no. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. John?
Yeah, only very quickly, a strange new world that we're moving into. And I like that ecosystem word that Perry used. And basically, we're kind of becoming ecosystem managers, you know, as opposed to academic leaders. So again, the role of the academic leader slowly changing, mindsets needing to change. And I have to say, I really did like that point from Professor Wang about, you know, we can't make that change unless we support our people along the way. So this whole idea of teamwork, reaching out to faculty, reaching out to students, you know, focusing on change management instead of bureaucratic procedures, supporting people, listening to people is maybe the way to get through that. But it'll be interesting to see what comes out the other end of it. Just last thing, while I still have the mic and before you close, we did get the results of that poll. Jane, I'm not sure if you're able to pull them up or not, but overall they're positive, I have to say. So the first one, has it impacted teaching and learning? 24% say not affected, which is good. And 76% of us, most of this community has been able to move across to digital learning. So 0% and 0% have been unaffected. And the other one on enrollment numbers is also generally positive. You know, I expected, if you look at the McKinsey report, compared to what the ICE community is saying, we're doing generally well. You know, have enrollment numbers dropped down by your institution? Most of us are saying yes, but by less than 20%. And then you've got another 21% who say they're down 40%, and then very few of us are up to 60%. So overall, you know, relatively speaking, we're doing not bad as a community. We should be optimistic that there's lots of, you know, intellectual capital and knowledge in this community. And I think if we continue to share and collaborate the way the ICE and this platform is allowing us to do, we should be quietly confident, you know, that not relaxed, but quietly confident if we put the right measures in place. Back to you, Dr. Whitelaw.
Terrific. Thanks, John. All right. I think we'll call it a wrap at that point. So again, may I just reiterate our thanks to Sabrina, to John and Perry for your very thoughtful and provocative comments. Craig, thank you for steering the ship. It was great for me to be able to just sit back and listen in, and I very much appreciate that. Thanks to Jane and Elise for managing all of the technology. Thank you to all of our participants for joining us this evening and for your questions and contributions. And we'll see you back same time tomorrow night for our workshops with Helly, with Peter Ryan, and with the Russell Group with Peter Russell. So on that note, I'll thank you all very much and wish you all a good evening, afternoon or morning.